You know, this was the Prime Minister. Part of his Christmas message, he's getting in nice and early here, was to talk about we're doing something about cost of living. But I've got to say, every Prime Minister, regardless of the ones you vote for or not, they all sort of end up in a prime ministerial bubble after a while, and they start to think when you give the biggest number possible, it shows the government's really helping. But I want to show you this poll first, which is what I mentioned in the editorial. 62% of people are finding it harder to make ends meet this year. 66% of people will be spending less on Christmas. 68% of people will be buying fewer or less expensive presents. 63% of people will be spending less on celebrating when it comes to meals, and 52% of people won't be travelling. So again, we are talking about mainstream Australia. The absolute bulk of normal, suburban and regional Australia match that up with the Prime Minister.
Families are feeling pressure. As a government, our main focus has been on delivering cost of living relief while taking pressure off inflation. Around 1.2 million families are receiving cheaper childcare. We helped up to 5 million households and small businesses with rebates on their energy bills. Real wages have increased for the last 2 quarters.
So, Hollie, here's what's missing. If 60-something% of people
real
have
wages
answered,
haven't increased the last 2 quarters, so I think the truth is missing there for a start.
But literally, I mean, again, 60-something% of people. This is a poll in the Sydney Morning Herald, right? They are, and believe me, Channel 9 newspapers are searching for the bounce back, and they'll be there pushing and squeezing the numbers till there's a bounce back next year. Again, Prime Minister can't turn around in the prime ministerial car and pick everyone up off the street, and you can't open up the lodge and turn it into a giant place for everyone to hang out for Christmas. But I just think that he's a little lost in the bubble about the big numbers of millions and thinking that that connects to the millions more who are living it like that.
Well, I mean, for a start, real wages have not increased. Real wages have continued to decline under this government, and significantly so. So there are very few Australians that will be out there listening to that and thinking, I have more money in my pocket than I did 12 or 18 months ago, because that is simply not the case. The thing that this government has managed to successfully achieve in record speed has actually been the creation, I think, of a new class in Australia of working poor. We now have families who have 2 working parents who, after 12 rate rises, increasing inflation and so many cost increases, whether it's energy, whether it's groceries, are absolutely struggling with 2 wages. If you are an average family of 4 with an average mortgage, you have to find $25,000 a year more after tax for your mortgage. Now, if you've got, you know, a fireman and a nurse, or a teacher and a paramedic, you ain't finding an extra $50,000 a year picking up the odd shift. So they've created a working poor, and I think those numbers you reflected on earlier in that survey is exactly where it is.
Well, and obviously the pressure has to come on the alternative government to start to say, well, what do you do if you took over the reins tomorrow? How does it change? Linda, I'm sure there's part of you that's going, well, isn't this nice, all these Conservatives with their now newly found bleeding hearts? But you know where we all come from. You certainly know where I come from. About just basic humanity, right? The basic normal assistance going, okay, again, I get what the government can do, I get what the government can't do, I also get what the government can seem like it's prioritising. And we saw this year, I'm going to go there, we saw $450 million on something they really wanted to do, right? And you can travel around the country and advocate for it, and you can take up every single media appearance talking about that if that's what you really want to do. They're not doing that on this issue, because if you admit there's a problem, then you have to solve the problem, or you own the problem. But what are you thinking about when it comes to these people? I mean, that huge, more than half of the country that's going to have a different Christmas.
Look, I don't think anybody's arguing. I certainly would never argue that this year in particular, there's not a whole lot of Australian families that are finding it really difficult. There's always people who are insulated from cost of living pressures and, of course, from inflation. But governing during a period of record, length inflation, sticky inflation right across the world that started, we know, to bump up when the Russian invasion of Ukraine happened, and has carried over and is a lot stickier than many economists predicted and most people want, these are really difficult times to govern. Our council in the City of Sydney, we've recently put $1.5 million more towards food grants. This is not a normal local government activity, and yet we absolutely wanted to ensure, Paul, that we were doing everything we could. So there's no argument that people are not doing it tough. But it is important to focus on those cost of living improvements, halving, the cost of prescription medication, making sure that childcare is cheaper, closing the loopholes bill to make sure that people's wages are going up and they're not getting paid less than the person next to them doing the same job. These are the kind of important things that the federal government has done to make life a little bit easier. It won't solve the problem, there's no argument about that, but similarly, we've come off the back of a government that has invested in stimulus payments during COVID, and as a result,
that every person demanded in the country.
And that the Labor Party supported and actually
wanted to do
called
more.
for us to
The Labor Party
extend.
wanted to
They
spend more.
wanted us to extend.
JobKeeper's not a bad thing.
I'm
But
acknowledging
they wanted to
that.
extend it.
But what did it do? It left the greatest debt in living history
Yeah, sure.
in
And now
Australia
you've
for
got to deal with
government.
it.
And so now we've got to deal with that.
But we also
I think
have-
nobody is denying that, right?
But we have demand-side inflation now. It's not supply-side inflation, which was
Because
at the end
of
of
the
COVID.
war in Ukraine,
No, that's
because of the
supply-side
huge
inflation.
number
That's
of
when
other
supply chain's difficult. This is demand-driven inflation. This is local inflation because it is now being driven by the high level of immigrants that are coming in, and we're seeing that pressure going onto the economy. We are fundamentally in a per capita recession. That is where we are.
We have been
We
for
are in a per
3
capita
quarters
recession.
now.
The only thing that is keeping the national accounts out of an absolute recession is the level of immigration. That is it. We are in a per capita recession. Australians' life is, quality of life is going backwards. There's no way to look around it.